Hey, everybody. Welcome back to a new week of the Curling Community Connection. It's Monday, 5 o'clock, and we are talking with a member of the LD23 community, Mr. Steven Jackson. And by way of introduction, let me just say that Steven grew up in Illinois and New York. He joined the Army in 2002 and was deployed to Iraq twice as a squad leader. While he was there, he graduated cum laude with a BA in business management from Chaminade University of Honolulu. Continued and he earned his MBA. He then went to Arizona Summit Law School on a merit scholarship. Congratulations! And he started his working career for J.P. Morgan Chase, and then went on to Dana and Associates. And now we talk to him as the main man behind Steven M. Jackson Law Group with 4 different locations. One in Prescott Valley, Gilbert, Scottsdale, and Desert Ridge. He focuses on estate planning and probate. And we're going to have a big rounded conversation because he was actually just published in the Scottsdale Independent with a really hard-hitting opinion piece. So, Mr. Jackson, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you, Mr. Curlin?
You can call me Eric. First, I thank you for your service. I think it's something we should say to everybody who we come in contact with has served in the military. We're going to have a little bit of a conversation about veteran issues later on in the program. But first, let's talk about law. And could you just kind of give us a brief introduction of what estate planning and probate, how those two differ, how they're alike, and what's that all about?
Okay, so there's a lot of attorneys around the Phoenix area. We're a big retiree community. So estate planning is kind of a big deal here. You can do anywhere between last wills and testaments, healthcare power of attorney, financial power of attorneys, to trusts. And so generally when you're talking about estate planning, you're looking to get around probate. And probate is the procedure by which the court and the state help to distribute your assets if you don't have certain things put into place. So if you don't have a trust set up or a beneficiary deed or beneficiary designations transferring your assets to whoever your beneficiaries are, then state law determines how that goes. In estate planning and probate world, you have a lot of attorneys some attorneys will focus on only estate planning, some attorneys will focus on only probate litigation. But in general, when you're talking probates, you also talk about guardianships and conservatorships. In my practice, I don't really do too many of those. That's when a person doesn't have a healthcare financial power of attorney and you need to get them evaluated so that they can no longer manage their affairs. And a lot of times that happens where elderly people can no longer manage due to dementia or Alzheimer's. But lately, I think a lot of what people are doing is either estate planning or fighting, and you're seeing a lot of litigation and a lot of probates and things like that that are going forward with what's going on.
So me being a teacher, I kind of look at the prefix there. Probate is pro, after the people die, right?
It actually is Latin for to prove. So it's the court where you prove what the last will and testament is, or you prove how the assets should be distributed. So you go to court, you say, look, I'm so-and-so's son, and I am entitled to their assets by reason of the fact that I'm their son. And so they would go to court, they would file an application, the court would accept the application. There are certain notice procedures that you have to do. You have to do an inventory and things like that. And then towards the end, you distribute the assets in accordance with state statute.
So, okay, so for my kind of efficacy here, it's basically if you do well with the estate planning, the probate should be a lot easier, right?
Either that,
take the time up front.
Yeah, right? Take the time up front, and then you don't have to go to probate. And most people here in Arizona, if you have your own house and you're trying to pass it, a trust is going to take it and pass it down. But there are actually less expensive ways to get things passed. If you're only looking to pass a house in Arizona, we have what's called a beneficiary deed. It's a simpler procedure by which you pass your house. So you could set designations on all of your accounts and your house, so that they all pass around probate without going to court at all. And all you'd have to do is record a death certificate with the county recorder at that point.
So I imagine now that, we have this pandemic going around and we've covered over 90,000 deaths in the United States. I think there are probably some more people looking at their own lives and kind of planning now for perhaps their demise. Are you seeing an increase in business and people planning their estates, or actually the arguments on the probate side? What do you got right now?
So right now, it's kind of a mixture. There are people who want to plan their estates, and I did when we first had the sign of the pandemic. Had like a slew of people who wanted to get in right before the shutdown happened. But after the shutdown happened, things kind of slowed down for a while because I think people are just being cautious on the estate planning front. But after the shutdown happened, I think a lot of people are sitting in their houses, and so what we ended up getting a lot of calls for were litigation, and so what you have are people trying to fix that 20-year-old title that they've been, for the house they've been living in, or a kid who thinks that they were, done wrong by a certain person and has this and is finally taking the step to try and get the money, because I think a lot of people are just worried about the future and the impact some of this stuff will have on them. But there has been a very interesting thing that happened, and I don't know if you've seen this, but one of the things that the governor did with the shutdown order was there was a statute going into effect on July 1st. And the statute said that we can now do what are called remote notaries. So for me, I don't want to meet clients right now at their, person to person because of potential risks and things like that. This is a big deal, and it's going to be probably the future of estate planning. And remote notaries are, I speak to you with the computer. You do your electronic signature with the computer. Your two witnesses are present with you, but I don't need to be. And so they made an executive order that backdates. The new statute comes into effect July 1st. They tried to backdate it to April 1st, but it doesn't look like many people are having a lot of success getting to become remote notaries. That's something we're still working on. But, during this time, there's a lot of people who need assistance. So what we'll do is we'll go out to their house, have a 10 feet, barrier, set up a table, have them sign, have their witnesses sign 10 feet away. And we've been able to actually effectively do that for clients who have severe, cancer in some certain situations. So it's been something that those people in that situation want to do, but it's just difficult and a lot of people don't want to take the risk.
Yeah. And what's your website in case anybody has some further questions that they don't want to ask over the air?
It's www.jacksonlawgroupaz.com.
So jacksonlawgroupaz.com. We'll have Andy put that into the comments on our Facebook. We're talking with Stephen Jackson. And if you have any questions about veteran issues or probate and estate planning, put it into the comments. Andy Gomez will get them to us. And even Seth Blattman, if you have a question over there on the Senate side, we'll get it answered for you. Hey, I want to kind of switch gears a little bit here. You and I met for coffee. I had asked if we could talk about veterans issues. I was never a person to serve in the armed forces, but I would like to serve in the House. And I think veterans issues are really important. You served 8 years as an enlisted soldier, and you were deployed to Iraq twice. You, in your second deployment, you were injured in a Humvee rollover, and you were put into an induced coma. You suffered a moderate brain injury, 2 collapsed lungs, 16 broken bones. You had pneumonia. You had a blood clot. Since then, you've suffered multiple blood clots and other complications, and you've had 10 surgeries. Now, I'm not speaking out of turn. This is actually part of your wonderful opinion piece in the Scottsdale Independent. And I would ask everybody to go there and read it. I've actually posted it on my website and not website, but on the Facebook, and kind of shared it a little bit.
Appreciate that.
But you have been through quite a bit. When we talk about walking the walk, you have walked the walk, crawled the crawl. I mean, you have done it all. So let's talk a little bit first about the Scottsdale Independent piece, and then we'll move on to some veteran issues and how perhaps people can help in this time.
Of course.
I really admired the way you wrote that piece, because you tried to come at it straight from a humanitarian point of view, that this isn't a matter of patriotism to wear a mask. You and I were talking a little bit beforehand, and I kind of likened it to if somebody sneezes, you say bless you, whether you're an atheist or a Jew or a Christian, doesn't matter. It's kind of like a reflex, right? It's a nice way to treat your fellow human. Or if somebody lets you into the roundabout, or you perhaps your lane in traffic is cut off and you then get to go in front, you do a little courtesy wave. It's kind of a nice thing to do. It's not like you have to do it. And now we get to the point where all of a sudden wearing masks seems to be a political statement. Like either it's opening the economy or putting the mason jar lid on and tight and hermetically sealing it. It's not, I don't see it as an either or. I see it as a nuanced approach. But I do see wearing a mask as a courtesy to others. Can you talk a little bit about your opinion piece?
So yeah, I think the reason I wrote it is just because, it has been taken as a political statement. I can go into Walmart and like I said in there is, you go to certain places and you get ridiculed for wearing a mask, or I had people try and come up and say stuff to me and, about wearing a mask or how we're all going to live and that kind of thing. And, I'm 35. I don't look like I've been through a whole lot when you're talking about just seeing me out in jeans and a long sleeve shirt and hat. And it's easy to be complacent when you're dealing with people like that at the grocery store, at Walmart, at Target. And I wanted to just tell people that it's not just people who are old and infirm and in long-term care who are receiving, who have issues that you should be caring for. There's a lot of middle-aged people. There's a lot of small children. I have friends who have, I have clients with COPD. I've got friends with medical issues that they've had for a very long time who have been able to live by the grace, by the grace of God in order to be able to live. And it's just a slap. It's almost a slap in the face to people who just need to get out to the store to buy milk. You're talking about an 80-year-old person who responded actually to that article and said, hey, my husband is 79 years old. He's an Air Force veteran who worked on planes and who was exposed to a lot of different gases. He's high risk, and I want to be able to go shop for him. So I think, like you said, humanitarian, we had a lot of people calling for unity for a long time on both sides. And I'm not trying to make a political statement. I'm trying to make a statement that says, look, we all get better if we can all move forward with an economy that works for everyone, where everybody can make purchases and everybody can participate. And I think for those of us that want to participate and want to be part of the economy again, it becomes very difficult when you can't trust other people to have that forethought in mind of, hey, maybe this affects somebody else. And hey, I know I have to wear a mask, but there is the potential that this could harm some other people.
Yeah, there's just so much we don't know. What we do know is that if you wear a mask, you're protecting others. You're not protecting yourself. But there is a barrier of you infecting other people. And we also know that some people are asymptomatic, that they don't even show symptoms. So for me, I had an online discussion. I'll call it a discussion with somebody. I really try to keep it above board. And it started off as me saying, I think people should wear masks. And, the person coming back, we can't shut the economy. That will hurt more people. And I said, whoa, whoa, whoa. This is not a binary choice. This is not an either or. And what I said to her then is, if your real intent is to keep the economy humming, then you would wear a mask so that people like me and others would feel more comfortable going out and spending dollars, right? Are you going to go into a store that has 75% people with masks? Or would you rather go into a store with 100% people wearing masks? And those people that are scared to come out, you can call them afraid, you can call them names. It doesn't help the situation. What would help your favorite grocer or your favorite restaurant is business.
That's been a big deal for me too. And I don't think I have, when you talk about, just in your daily anecdotal life and you talk to your friends, there are a lot of people who may say, I'm here, I'm going to do what I want, and that kind of thing. And they want to reopen the economy. And that's the first conversation. I mean, I own a business, a lot of people are suffering from this, and the economy can only open if people can feel comfortable going. And if we're talking about having a successful reopening, it only benefits the economy if everybody can go out. And if people don't feel confident, they're not going to spend money, and you may have a longer economic downturn if people can't go. And that's, I think that was also some of what I brought in was just the practical. You're not going to open up the economy to a strong economy with only 85% of the population able to go to, restaurants or businesses or the movies. And you're already going to have people who just won't go. So at least with masks, you can make the case that, you may get another 20% of the population out there spending money. So it's not just a humanitarian issue, it's an economic issue. And I don't know if you saw today that the governor put out a statement to a lot of different businesses telling them that, hey, we're trying to, to be free, and we're trying to allow all this stuff, but you also have to remember people are not going to come out if you're not having PPE, if you're not taking those steps to be sanitary and that kind of thing. And so, go ahead.
No, yeah. I mean, there's actually Facebook groups starting where people are saying, hey, let's, they're real kind of little groups where it's say, put in the restaurants that are following the PPE guidelines or the CDC guidelines, because I don't want to have to go in and turn around and walk out. I don't want to waste the time. I just want to support establishments that support my health. And it's really perplexing that there are any restaurants or bars allowing their servers to actually make a choice as to whether they want to wear them or not. Look, I mean, this is business decision. I think for business sake, they would want to, but that's just me.
The liability decision too. If you're looking at it from a legal liability perspective, if you're forcing workers to come back to work and you're not providing proper PPE, then one of those business members, one of those employees gets sick, and there may not be the largest amount of litigation available to some certain people, but if they can prove causation, there may be a case against the business, and that may trickle down to customers. So with my business personally, when we have such elderly customers, I have to have those things in place, or one, I'll lose them voluntarily, but two, I face potential liability from a litigation standpoint, and I don't think that that's a liability that is going to go away very quickly. So as a business, if you're not exercising proper standards, people just won't come in. But you're also potentially looking at, as time goes on, you're going to look at those, you see people who are trying to get into businesses without wearing masks and saying, you can't do that, you got to let me in. You may have people who start planting in businesses who are just trying to start litigation against businesses who are not doing that. And it's a lot of bad things, and a lot of bad things can come of that. It's a very litigious society right now, and I want people to be careful. That's about it. I just want people to be careful, and I want people just to understand that you have the right not to wear a mask, but I don't have the right to go out. With you exercising that right, a lot of people don't have the right to go out in public, and it's an encroachment on other people when it comes down to it, if you're not going to do it inside places. And if you're a restaurant that doesn't, and I can understand patrons and things like that. You can't eat a meal without taking off a mask. That's reasonable. Sure. But standing in a line outside Trader Joe's and being that close to people who may or may not be infected, it's a danger that most people aren't going to take. So I get clients, and I have clients. A client asked me today, when are you going to start going out? Because I've been locked in my house now for 2 months. And, I told her, I was like, reasonably, probably July, maybe August, just depending on whether or not we have a spike. And I'm going to wait. That's kind of how I look at things.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of litigious, I'm a little bit worried at the national level and even at the state level that it seems like there's a large group that just want to kind of give some blanket immunities to all kinds of businesses. And I think, of course, that's the wrong way to go, I believe, because that will then encourage poor behavior rather than keeping everybody on the straight and narrow. I do believe that there's a case you could be made for, frivolous lawsuits, but that's always the comeback when people want to protect their wealthy donors, when they want to protect big business. They say, oh, that's such an inconvenience, and please,
Well, when you want to force your restaurant workers, for example, to go back to work so that you can make money and not have them in a protected environment because you don't believe in masks, then that's somewhat of an abuse. If you look at that and you say these people are having to be forced to come back into situations where they're potentially going to be exposed to something and they're not going to make any more money and they get sick. That's the kind of case that, you know, they're trying to prevent right now. I think today they put something out in the legislature to try to do it. If they're going to do something, it needs to be narrowly tailored, because I do understand that there is a lot of litigiousness out there, but you also have to remember that we're basically being thrown back into the fire, and a lot of people who don't have the wherewithal to not be thrown back into the fire are being done, you know, they're being forced to go back to work or else losing their jobs. And that's a tough situation for anybody to be in, and those people are probably going to be the most vulnerable and the most hard hit by the coronavirus.
Yeah. Speaking about tough situations, you are a proud member of the Disabled American Veterans, also the American Legion, and the Veterans of Foreign Wars. You've been around the block there in those groups. Tell me a little bit about the veterans issues this time. I would imagine isolation for some of our veterans is extremely difficult.
Yeah.
What kind of help is needed right about now?
So, I mean, if you're looking at American Legion and VFW and DAV, a lot of the veterans organizations out there are providing different, you know, food for veterans, transportation for veterans, that kind of thing. They take them to their appointments at the hospital. You can volunteer at the VA hospital or at the DAV to transport veterans back and forth. But really, all those organizations, one of the other things they do is lobby. So American Legion, VFW, DAV, they lobby on behalf of younger veterans, and younger veterans are not the core percent of the population of the American Legion, VFW, and DAV. Right now, if you look at Scottsdale's American Legion, they're asking for donations because they've had to shutter for a good 2 or 3 months. And the way that they make, you know, the way that they can make a lot of their money is by running their kitchen and running bingo and things like that to people directly. Well, their population that plays bingo is going to be an older population, and they're losing a lot of money. They're bleeding money right now. So I donated personally. I'm asking that everybody that's there can donate. There's Post 3513 in South Scottsdale is the VFW. In Old Town, there's the American Legion Post 44. It's right in Old Town. It's right behind. There's a new Korean place right there. But they're reopening now. But I don't know that you're going to see a place with an elderly population really reopening to a lot of fanfare. And then there's the DAV Post 22. That's another South Scottsdale post that, you know, they are there for veterans. Veterans can go there to seek help with claims or getting pointed in the right direction or just camaraderie and community. So I hope everybody considering that.
And this is what I'm going to do, Stephen. I have written a letter to the editor, basically calling out my opponent, Jay Lawrence. I think that it's ridiculous that he's accepting a per diem when he was on basically recess, being at his home. He collected over $1,500 that is supposed to be used for expenses that he didn't incur. And I know that a lot of my soon-to-be colleagues have actually donated those dollars. I have actually, I've asked him in an open letter to donate those dollars somewhere worthy. And I said I would match those $1,500 to a charity of my choice. I don't think he's going to pay it. If he does, I'll still do it. But if he doesn't, I would like to give that $1,500 to one of the places that you just mentioned. So you and I, on another off air, will decide which is a worthy one. And because I don't think splitting it up will really give the bang for the buck. But you and I can talk about that at another time. Okay.
Of course. Sounds good.
All right. So people can donate time. People can donate money. What about at the legislative level, right? So you and I have had some discussions. When I am hopefully elected, what can I do to help out veterans from the state point of view?
Well, hopefully a lot. There have been a lot of bills presented in the past 3 or 4 years that have not gone anywhere. And Jay Lawrence has been kind of one of my pet peeves with the legislature, because if you look at the only bill that he's gotten passed, it was a bill to track veteran suicides and have reporting done for veterans who were on drugs or alcohol at the time of veteran suicides. So I'm a little bit more of a personal liberty person. I'm not a huge, I was a little against the first legislation because it went a little too far in collecting personal information for veterans who are at the VA. And it was frustrating to see the only bill come out that had language that was specific in it to target veterans who may be using medicinal marijuana or alcohol or any other drug. So they asked for in that bill any veteran who had any of those things in their system at the time of their death for that to be reported for any suicides. So it's ideologically he's been against that the whole time, and medicinal marijuana and all those things. I of course wish they would come out in support of that, but it's just frustrating that was the only thing to get passed for veterans, because at the same time, if you look at the United Arizona Veterans, the UAV, they asked for $1.2 million for veterans benefits counselors at the Arizona Department of Veteran Services, and that bill was one of the bills that did not pass. And there's been a standing bill almost every year for about 5 or 6 years trying to provide preference for veterans businesses who apply for contracts in the state of Arizona. That bill also includes a preference for Arizona companies, but it never goes anywhere, and it's not been promoted. The major bill last year, aside from the veteran suicides, was a bill by Jay Lawrence to allow veterans access to state parks for free if they were disabled veterans. And that went nowhere. So it's been a very frustrating time. I actually publish every year with my law firm a blog, and we go through every single piece of veterans legislation. I've done it since 2018. We go through everything that wasn't passed from the year before and everything that was. And there's just not been much major legislation surrounding veterans that's been passed in the past 3 or 4 years. And I know there's been calls this year in election time to finally bring some of these things up. They're going to be thrown to the wind now that the coronavirus happened. But I'm looking, forward to a time where we'll be able to probably properly invest. And one of the big things for me is disabled veterans. So there were bills about 2 or 3 years ago, I think it was Mark Cardenas that did it. There was a bill that said if a veteran was 30% or more disabled, his kids could receive 60 credits worth of tuition or college free tuition in Arizona at any state school. And so for me, I mean, my kids, obviously it's not a huge thing for me there. But what it is it's disabled veterans and people who went to war. Those kids miss their parents or one of their parents for years at a time and are going to suffer through veterans who have harsher PTSD, veterans who are amputees, veterans whose moms, whose wives will pay more attention to the veteran because there's medical issues than they may to the kids at certain times. And you're going to have a lot of kids who are coming from these veterans households who are retiring to Arizona, and those kids are going to be in our systems, and they're going to be at higher risk for a lot of these different things than the average Arizona family. And so for me, I think tuition reduction or free for veterans who are over 30% for their children would be a beneficial thing. There was actually a Republican, this legislature, who proposed that. I think is that a Snowflake is where it was, but there's a few things like that being proposed. And I think that those need to be prioritized. I think if you look at Texas, for example, no veteran in Texas who is 100% service-connected disabled has to pay property tax. That's a Republican state. That's not a Democratic, bringing my California to Arizona kind of thing. In Texas, Red Meat, Texas, veterans who have a service connection disability do not have to pay property taxes. And if our state were to properly allocate the money, that wouldn't be the case. And I saw 5 years ago, Republicans wouldn't even bring a bill to 3 or 4 years ago, Republicans wouldn't even bring a bill to the floor to give a property tax exemption because they said they didn't want to do piecemeal tax cuts. So it's been a very frustrating thing to see lots of special interest groups get money, tax cuts, all these different things. And, I know your big thing is teachers. My big thing is veterans. And when you see it, it's a very frustrating thing to see, especially when you're talking about a group that's not going to be as wealthy as a lot of the population, a group that's bringing in federal dollars for free that come to Arizona and are used throughout Arizona, and which provides veterans who are responsible citizens who've served our country. So, yeah. I mean,
Yeah, it is frustrating for any group, especially around election time, when the same representative who won't carry a piece of legislation goes around peacocking that they're the person that supports teachers and education, or I'm the guy who's for veterans. And it's disingenuous, and unfortunately, it works because not enough people are paying attention. But I thank you for your service. I'd be happy to kind of put legislation on the floor. I think you're absolutely right. When one person serves, the family serves, basically. The family is a member of the United States Armed Forces. Hey, we got to wrap up here. So one more time with the website. It's StephenJacksonArizona.com.
JacksonLawGroupAZ.com.
JacksonLawGroupAZ.com. We're going to play a little game, but I want to, this is the week that most of our seniors are supposed to be graduating. I know that you have an 8th grader that's not graduating. Do you have any special words for those that are leaving and should be going off into the world or off into college or off into 9th grade?
Yeah, just be excited. It's not the world that you wanted, but it's the world that you've got. And there are a lot of people who've gotten bad worlds coming out. Make the best of it. Be excited. It's still life. You're still going to be fine, hopefully, knock on wood, in 5-10 years. And worry about the 5 to 10 years. Don't worry about the next year.
All right. Good words of wisdom there. Okay, are you ready to play a little bit of You Don't Know Jack, son?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, so this is Famous Jacksons. You've got, you're one of those great guys that have 2 first names. Jackson could be a first name. But we have many famous Jacksons out there. I'm going to give you a clue. You're going to have to try to identify that famous Jackson. Are you ready, sir?
Sure.
Okay, during the Super Bowl halftime show, Justin Timberlake pulled off something, and she had a what do they call those things? A fashion faux pas, something like that.
Wardrobe malfunction. Janet Jackson. I was in Iraq watching that Super Bowl, actually, 2004.
You were oh, wow.
Yeah.
All right. How about this guy that said some F-bombs about snakes on a plane?
Samuel L. Jackson.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Okay. This guy, if you put 2 10s together and say, give me one bill, this guy's right on the cover.
Oh, Andrew Jackson.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, this guy, he was the original two professional sport guy. Yeah, very good, Bo Jackson. I feel like we're on like this pyramid thing, you know that pyramid game?
Gotta love Bo Jackson.
Yeah, he was great. You don't know Bo. I remember those commercials with Nike. Awesome. Okay, how about this guy? He's a little bit older. He actually ran for president and is part of the Rainbow Coalition.
Oh, man.
Chicago.
Rainbow Coalition.
I think it was the Rainbow Coalition. African-American guy. Democrat.
Oh, Jesse?
Yeah, Jesse Jackson.
Jackson.
Very good. Okay, one of my personal favorites. This guy clocked 3 home runs in the World Series against the Dodgers when he was with the Yankees. Number 44. Number 1 in your hearts.
Oh,
Reggie Jackson. All right. Couple more. We're kind of going right through this. I love this. All right. How about this guy? He's the director, writer, producer for all those Lord of the Rings. I'd never seen any of the movies, but I heard of him.
I know the guy. Well, I've watched all the movies. I'm not sure.
Peter Jackson. Gotcha.
Peter Jackson. You got me with one. Yeah.
Okay. So right around the time of Andrew Jackson, this guy was a Confederate general.
Stonewall. I just read his book. Was it Raising Rebel Yell? Was a book that came out. Yeah, I just read.
Oh, nice. Okay, last one. You're a little bit younger than me, but I used to, when I was a teenager, I used to really look forward to Charlie's Angels. And I actually thought she was the best one out of them all. Not Farrah Fawcett, not Jacqueline Smith, but who was the third angel, the one with the brains?
I don't know.
Kate Jackson. Got you there, Mr. Steven. If anybody's got some old pictures of Kate Jackson, send them to me, all right? It's only Monday, and I need to kind of get happy again.
Yeah, exactly. Get happy again.
Steven Jackson, this has been a great honor. We're going to talk a little bit offline in the coming weeks where I can donate that $1,500 because I think that's a great spot right there in the heart of Scottsdale. Thanks for your support. And again, this I should probably say Stephen Jackson and his legal team, they're not here to support or endorse my candidacy. This was just a matter of giving some knowledge to the community. Tomorrow, with the same thing, we're going to have another special guest. We have the incoming superintendent of Scottsdale Public Schools, Dr. Menzel, and then Wellness Wednesdays. Maybe you tune in then, Steve. We got family and child psychologists to help us out on Wednesdays through the whole pandemic thing.
Oh, cool.
So a lot of love your way. Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you. Take care.
Kate Jackson. Kate Jackson.